Act in one manner and voice your support for people acting in completely opposite manner. If you are asked to find a word suitable for this sentence, most of you will come up with the word hypocrisy. You're not wrong though, but how do you counter hypocrisy? Definitely not by pointing it out, though it does help in ultimate analysis. The proper way to counter hypocrisy is by finding a unique selling point of those engaged in hypocrisy. And do you know what kind of people engage in hypocrisy? It is always the elites of any social, economic, political, or geopolitical order for that matter. You see, people sitting at the top of the echelons can get away with preaching exactly opposite of what they practice. Simply because too many people at the lower end of hierarchy have hedged their futuristic bets on them. All anyone needs to do to eliminate this hypocritic elitism is lending a helping hand to the interest groups wrongly affected by these elites. India's current foreign policy setup understands this principle to the core. It was recently evident in India's yet another abstention on issues involving Russia and Ukraine. Hi and welcome to TFIPost. I'm your host Apurva. If you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe and press the bell icon to get all the latest updates. And if you're watching us on Facebook, do like, share and subscribe to the page. Let's begin with the video report. Russia versus West has always been one of the most fascinating theatrics of the last 3 decades. The West refused to develop a bonhomie with the biggest sovereign landmass on the planet, and in return Russia gave birth to a phenomenon called Vladimir Putin. The man has been giving sleepless nights to the Western elites. And now the West's last hope, India's PM Modi, has explicitly told them that he won't come to their rescue. Recently, Russia conducted a referendum in 4 areas belonging to pre-war Ukraine. The referendum results were not surprising at all, and the majority of people voted in favor of being ruled by Vladimir Putin. Now, in official Russian documents, Luhansk and Donetsk in the east and Kherson and others in the south have become parts of Russia. All the 4 regions combinedly comprised 18% of the pre-war Ukraine. Putin declared its ratification in a historic speech at the Kremlin. As expected, the whole of Western Bloc tried to stop the process of assimilation of these territories into Russia. But predictably, they failed. The only option left for them was to declare it illegal on global platforms so that other countries do not lend their supporting hands to the new changes in the map of Eastern Europe. They followed their old routine of using the United Nations Security Council to get their demands accepted. At this juncture, it is necessary to point out the absurdity of this act. You see, Russia is a permanent member of the UNSC. Its own vote against any resolution is good enough to get it quashed. Despite knowing that, the Western elites pushed for an anti-referendum resolution in the UNSC. Russia vetoed the proposal, leading to the end of the road for the referendum. Do not know why these elites put forth the resolution for the vote in the UNSC. Maybe winning is not their point, but creating theatrics is. Anyways, the resolution was also a test for India. On one hand, it is increasing its cooperation with Russia, while on the other, it has to ensure that the United States does not foster terrorism in Pakistan. India refused to be overt in its communication. Instead, it decided to abstain from the voting. India reiterated that only peace talks between the 2 countries can solve the crisis. Explaining the rationale for India's abstention, Ruchira Kamboj, India's permanent representative to the UN, said, and I quote, India's position has been clear and consistent from the very beginning of this conflict. The global order is anchored on the principles of the UN Charter, international law and respect for sovereignty and the territorial integrity of all the states. Escalation of rhetoric or tension is in no one's interest. It is important that pathways are found for a return to the negotiating table. Keeping in view the totality of the evolving situation, India decided to abstain on the resolution. Though India decided to stay neutral on the voting, it is largely seen as a pro-Russia move. Apparently, Russia has always appreciated India refusing to vote in the UNSC. But the bigger reason why India's abstention is considered as a support to Russia is because India has somehow been able to occupy a center stage in this conflict. Putin and Zelensky, the respective heads of the states and territories on each side of the aisle, have requested PM Modi for support. Zelensky even deployed his NATO friends to ask India for support. For n number of times, Western countries siding with Zelensky asked India to take an anti-Russia stand. But an independent foreign policy does not allow any establishment to succumb to that pressure. Ultimately, India did not. Not only did India keep abstaining from voting against Russia, but it also increased its economic partnership with the Putin administration. Suddenly, the bilateral visits by the business delegates of both the countries increased. Russia became a key oil supplier to India while Putin laid out the red carpet for Indian businesses. As if this was not enough for the Western Bloc, the increasing ties were given a massive upward push by the Modi government's decision to phase out the need for dollar in bilateral trade. Ultimately, the United States and its friends got desperate and offered more lucrative deals to India, one of them being support to India against China's aggression. At the G7 meeting, Biden even rushed to get himself noticed by PM Modi, but India did not buzz. However, India kept anti-Russians on tenterhooks through well-crafted diplomatic moves. For instance, it did vote against Russia in one of the procedural votes in the UNSC. Russia did not want Zelensky to address, and that is why they put forth a voting proposal out there. India went against Russia and voted in favor of Zelensky's freedom of speech. As soon as this news came out, media portals flooded the information networks by calling it an anti-Russia move. The reality is that it was like a college canteen election, which is frankly of negligible significance. And then came the much-awaited SEO summit. During the summit, PM Modi and President Putin held a one-to-one discussion. PM Modi told Putin that the current era is not an era of war and he should look forward towards peace in Eastern Europe. On this part, Putin also conveyed his helplessness to PM Modi by stating that he is ready to talk, but Ukrainian President Zelensky is not. However, for Western elites and their propaganda portals, PM Modi just appealing to President Putin was an anti-Russia move. To describe PM Modi's dialogue with Putin, words such as assails, cheers publicly, cheers, rebukes were used in the headlines. One reason for these kinds of explosive headlines is that they did not want Putin's side of war to come to the forefront. Through his open dialogue with PM Modi, Putin was communicating to the world that though he started the war, Zelensky is now the one who wants to continue it. Later, Putin stood vindicated when Zelensky submitted an application to join NATO, something which Russia has always expressed fears about. Meanwhile, these globalist elites were successful and Putin's side got indirectly censored. Instead, the political brethren of these media portals conveyed to the world that India is finally doing away with its support to Russia. This partly explains their motive behind bringing the useless resolution on the UNSC table. These elites probably thought that even though Russia would veto it, India's support to the resolution would give moral legitimacy to their reckless anti-Russia stand. But India just punctured that dream and made it clear that Atmanirbhar means Atmanirbhar in a strict sense. No liberal interpretation of the word exists in India's dictionary.